Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have a great show for you guys today. We've got a lot going on. If you could, please do hit the like button on the stream and subscribe to Tochnyi. Really helps us out. We also have a social media account on Twitter and Blue Sky. So if you guys want to follow, we do post some updates there. And you can also check out our website, tochnyi.info. That's where we keep all of our in-depth stuff, our maps, our articles, and analysis, and things like that. So we have a great broadcast, as I said. First, I'll be presenting the news, as always. That'll be followed by a report from Mr. German Aid to Ukraine. That'll be followed by our report on the Russian economy by Stanimir. And then we'll be announcing a new project that's been worked on by one of our associates, or members, I should say, and also a frontline update from our colleague Jay. So, and I should also mention, of course, towards the end of the broadcast, if we have time, we'll answer as many questions as we can from chat. So if you guys have any questions during the broadcast, during any segment, feel free to ask your questions. So without any delay, then, I will go ahead and present the news. These are the main headlines as of November 2nd, 2025. First up, we have operations. Ukraine's military intelligence agency carried out an operation on October 31st in Moscow Oblast, striking a major Russian military fuel network that supplied essential resources to its armed forces. According to the agency, the target was the Koltsevoy, or Ring Pipeline, a 400-kilometer system transporting gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel from refineries in Ryazan, Nizhny Novgorod, and Moscow to support Russian military logistics. The strike reportedly disabled all three main fuel lines of the system near the Remensky district, southeast of the capital. Despite defenses, including anti-drone barriers and armed patrols, the attack successfully rendered the infrastructure inoperative. The pipeline had the capacity to move roughly 3 million tons of jet fuel each year, in addition to large quantities of other fuels, making it a significant disruption to both military operations and the local economy in the region. Footage shared by Ukraine's intelligence services showed the special operation in action. The incident was part of a wider overnight campaign involving drones across multiple Russian regions. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed to have neutralized 98 drones over 10 areas, including 11 above Moscow Oblast. Reports from Zhukovsky near Moscow indicated power outages during the night, which local officials attributed to automated system shutdowns. In Tula, there were reports of traffic restrictions due to drone debris. On October 31st, Ukrainian naval forces launched Neptune cruise missiles against key energy installations within Russia, striking the Orlovskaya thermal power plant in Oryol Oblast and the Novobryansk electrical substation in Bryansk. The Ukrainian Navy confirmed that coordinated strikes were aimed at facilities supplying electricity to Russian military-linked industries, causing major interruptions to the operations. The Neptune missile was originally developed as an anti-ship weapon, but has been adapted for long-range missions capable of reaching up to 1,000 kilometers, allowing Ukraine to target critical sites deep within Russian territory. According to a spokesperson for the branch, this action demonstrates the Ukrainian Navy's increased deep strike capabilities inside Russia. On the night of October 29th, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces conducted coordinated strikes on multiple energy installations within Russia. Reports shared by Russian Telegram channels citing local witnesses described explosions and fires at several industrial sites during the night. One of the targeted locations was an oil refinery in Novospaskoye in Ulyanovsk Oblast, which processes about 600,000 tons of crude oil annually, which represents about 0.2% of Russia's total refining capacity, and it produces gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil. A second strike hit another refinery in Tabashino in the Mari El Republic, resulting in reported fires and secondary detonations. This facility refines roughly 1.3 million tons of oil each year, accounting for around 0.5% of the nation's total output. Ukrainian unmanned systems also attacked a gas processing complex in Budyanovsk in Stavropol Krai. The plant has an annual throughput of 2.2 billion cubic meters of gas, supplying energy to several regional industries and provides feedstock for petrochemical production. Ukraine announced that it had covertly destroyed one of Russia's newly developed Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missiles on Russian soil prior to the weapon's first recorded use in combat. According to the head of Ukraine's security service, the SBU, the operation took place at a missile testing site in Russia's Astrakhan region and was carried out in cooperation with the military intelligence agency and foreign partners. The SBU chief described the mission as entirely successful, stating that Ukrainian forces managed to eliminate one of 3 Oreshnik missiles located at the Kapustin Yar range. Reports differed on the exact timing of the operation. The president indicated that it happened during the summer of 2023, while other accounts from Ukrainian officials place it a year later in mid-2024. Neither timeline could be independently verified by international media. The Ukrainian president, who also presided over the briefing, stated that Ukrainian intelligence estimates Russia's production capacity for the Oreshnik at roughly 6 units annually. The missile was used for the first time in an attack on the city of Dnipro in November of 2024. Russia claimed that the Oreshnik is virtually impossible to intercept and possesses a level of destructive power compared to a nuclear weapon, a statement considered untrue by most missile analysts. The Ukrainian leader called on allied governments to impose sanctions on the Russian entities involved in the missile's development, warning that its range and payload capabilities pose a growing security threat to all of Europe. The foreign minister of Ukraine reported that Russia has recently employed the land-based 9M729 cruise missile against Ukraine, a weapons development that previously prompted the United States to exit the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019. This account constitutes the first formal confirmation from Kyiv that the 9M729 has been used in combat. Another Ukrainian official stated that Russia launched the 9M729 against Ukrainian targets 23 times, and that Kyiv had recorded 2 prior launches of the missile in 2022. The U.S. abandonment of the INF treaty was driven by Washington's assessment that the weapon breached the treaty's 500-kilometer range cap, an allegation which Moscow has denied. Technical assessments by the Missile Threat Database produced by the Center for Strategic and International Studies lists the 9M729 as capable of carrying either conventional or nuclear payloads and having a maximum reach of up to 2,500 kilometers, although a Ukrainian military source stated that the 9M729 fired on October 5th traveled at a distance of around 1,200 kilometers. Up next, we have economy and aid. Canada has initiated legal proceedings to confiscate a Russian-operated Antonov AN-124 heavy transport aircraft that has remained grounded at Toronto Pearson International Airport since February of 2022, with the intention of transferring it to Ukraine upon the successful forfeiture. The action was announced on October 31st by the country's foreign minister during a meeting of G7 energy and environment ministers in Toronto. The aircraft belongs to the Volga-Dnieper Group, a Russian company under Canadian sanctions. The minister described the move as a demonstration of accountability, emphasizing that those aiding Russia's war effort would face consequences and that Ukraine would receive support in rebuilding. Officials noted that tracing the plane's ownership structure was complex and that the government had initiated its legal case earlier in the year. Both judicial and legislative measures are being considered to enable the aircraft's transfer. The AN-124, among the largest cargo planes in the world, is capable of carrying substantial military or industrial equipment. Canadian officials previously stated that Russia could have employed it for moving military supplies. The minister added that the handover in part would compensate Ukraine for the Antonov aircraft destroyed early in the war. According to Bloomberg, the Attorney General began the forfeiture process in May of 2025 against the aircraft known as Ruslan, owned by Volga-Dnieper Airlines. On October 30th, New Zealand announced a new round of sanctions targeting 65 additional vessels operating within Russia's shadow fleet, 7 entities linked to the country's oil trade, and 2 individuals from Belarus, Iran, and North Korea. Not sure how 2 individuals could be from 3 places, but anyway, involved in refining and transporting Russian petroleum. The decision was made public by the foreign minister during a meeting with the Nordic foreign ministers in Stockholm. According to the statement, the measures are directed at networks that facilitate Russia's energy exports and help sustain the war effort. The foreign minister stated by focusing on the oil supply chain, New Zealand is reinforcing international initiatives intended to restrict the flow of funds supporting Russia's military campaign. The announcement came shortly after a Reuters investigation revealed that New Zealand-based insurance firm Maritime Mutual had provided coverage to ships involved in the movement of sanctioned Iranian and Russian oil. Such coverage allows vessels to dock at ports that mandate proof of insurance, thereby facilitating continued trade despite the sanctions. After imposing sanctions earlier in the month on the Russian state oil company Rosneft, the U.S. Treasury has issued an official license permitting continued dealings with the company's subsidiaries in Germany for an additional 6 months. The details of the authorization were released on the Treasury Department's website. According to the license, transactions that would otherwise be restricted under the Russian Harmful Foreign Activities Sanctions regulations are temporarily allowed if they involved Rosneft Deutschland Refining and Marketing or any entity in which that company, or RN Refining and Marketing, holds a direct or indirect ownership stake of at least 50%. The authorization remains valid until April 29, 2026. The decision effectively fulfills Germany's request for an exemption, with Berlin asserting that the subsidiaries in question operate independently of Russian control. The extension gives Germany time to finalize arrangements concerning Rosneft's local assets. Washington had previously established a 6-month period for German authorities to address ownership and operational control of the Russian company's holdings within the country. Lukoil, one of Russia's largest privately held oil producers, announced that it intends to divest its international operations following the imposition of extensive U.S. sanctions on the company and its subsidiaries. In a statement published on its official website, the company said the move was a response to the newly enacted restrictions from several governments and confirmed it was reviewing purchase proposals for its overseas assets. Lukoil contributes approximately 15% of Russia's oil output and around 2% of global oil production. The company's decision to sell off its international holdings marks a significant withdrawal from Europe, where it maintains several major strategic assets. These include the Lukoil Neftochim Burgas refinery in Bulgaria, the largest in the Balkans, with a processing capacity of roughly 196,000 barrels per day and access to the Rosanets oil terminal at the port of Burgas. Since August this year, the refinery has largely stopped using Russian crude due to the EU import ban and now secures oil primarily from Saudi Arabia, Kazakhstan, and Iraq. Bulgarian authorities have been closely monitoring the facility amid scrutiny of compliance with European Union sanctions. Lukoil also owns the Petrotel Lukoil refinery in Romania, a key part of its downstream operations that includes lubricant production and distribution. The company also holds a 45% stake in the Zeeland refinery in the Netherlands, granting it a foothold in Western European energy markets. Its European operations further encompass major lubricant production plants in Finland, Austria, and Romania, as well as widespread retail and fuel distribution networks operating under the Lukoil and Teboil brands across several countries, including Bulgaria, Croatia, Romania, Serbia, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. These include extensive gas station chains under both brand names, forming one of the largest independent fuel retail networks in Eastern Europe. Russian sources currently estimate the value of Lukoil's international assets at approximately $19 billion, and reports indicate that a potential buyer has already expressed interest in acquiring parts of the company's European portfolio. The planned divestments would represent a major restructuring of Lukoil's global presence and a significant shift in Russia's commercial footprint in the European energy sector. Up next, we have international relations. Ukraine's High Anti-Corruption Court sentenced the former State Fiscal Service chief Roman Nasarov to 6 years in prison for his role in a gas extraction scheme connected to a former lawmaker from the banned Party of Regions. The ruling was announced on October 31st, following findings that Nasarov had abused his authority while in office. According to the Anti-Corruption Action Center, the court determined that Nasarov had made unlawful administrative decisions that benefited former parliamentarian Alexander Onyshenko, who was linked to a company involved in the gas extraction operation. The Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office later confirmed that Nasarov was convicted under the Criminal Code for abuse of power. Nasarov led the fiscal agency between 2015 and 2016 and was accused of approving deferrals of rent payments for subsoil use owned by Onyshenko's firm, effectively granting financial advantages to the company. The investigation into the case began in 2017 and has proceeded through years of legal proceedings. The court also imposed a fine of about $400 and prohibited Nasarov from holding certain government posts for 3 years. His co-defendant, Volodymyr Novikov, was acquitted. Nasarov was placed in custody pending the final outcome of an expected appeal. Ukraine announced that it has transferred a captured Russian serviceman to Lithuania to face prosecution for war crimes, marking the first such extradition since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion. The country's prosecutor general described the move as a historic milestone in international accountability efforts. The extradited individual, identified as a Russian sailor who served with the military police, was captured by Ukrainian forces in the Zaporizhia region near the village of Robotine. According to Ukrainian authorities, the man took part in the unlawful detention and mistreatment of civilians and prisoners of war. One of the victims was a Lithuanian national, which led Vilnius to seek his extradition. Lithuania's Prosecutor General's office confirmed that the suspect faces charges under its war crime statutes and could receive a life sentence if convicted. The office noted that Lithuanian investigators work closely with their Ukrainian counterparts to coordinate the transfer and gather evidence. Officials in Vilnius said the accused, along with other Russian personnel, participated in violent acts against detainees that included physical abuse, confinement in a metal container, partial suffocation, suspension by the hands, exposure to freezing water, and the use of electric shocks. A Lithuanian court has ordered that he remain in custody for at least 3 months pending the trial. Polish military authorities reported that their air force intercepted a Russian Il-20 reconnaissance aircraft over the Baltic Sea on the morning of October 31st, the third such occurrence this week. According to the operational command of the Polish Armed Forces, 2 MiG-29 fighter jets were launched around 9 a.m. to intercept the aircraft, which had been flying without a flight plan and with its transponder turned off, creating a potential hazard to regional air traffic. Polish pilots identified the aircraft and escorted it in line with NATO procedures. The Russian plane did not enter Polish airspace during the encounter. The interception followed 2 similar incidents earlier in the week. On October 29th, Polish fighters intercepted another Il-20 and escorted it away from the area under their responsibility. And on October 30th, another Russian reconnaissance plane was intercepted over the Baltic Sea. Military officials said that the 3 consecutive incidents indicate an increase in Russian aerial activity in the Baltic region. And last item this week, Ukraine's president announced that the country's foreign intelligence service has identified the location of more than 300 children taken from Ukraine to Russia during the ongoing war. He said the information, which includes the named and confirmed addresses, will be shared with international partners and government leaders assisting efforts to secure the children's return. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, thousands of Ukrainian children have been taken from their families and transferred to Russian territory or areas under occupation. Such an action is a grave violation of international law. President Zelensky described the initiative as part of a broader diplomatic campaign designed to challenge Moscow's denial of responsibility for these deportations. He stated that Ukraine is providing detailed documentation to prevent Russian authorities from disputing knowledge of the children's whereabouts. According to his statement, the first list, containing over 300 verified entries, will be distributed to foreign leaders involved in the recovery efforts. Ukrainian intelligence and law enforcement agencies continue to investigate and compile additional cases as new information is confirmed. And that's it for the main headlines this week. We will now move to the next segment.
Hello guys. As always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. We are starting with a short story from Thursday, thanks to recently donated firefighting vehicles from the German city of Kirchheim unter Teck and the German association Ermstal Hilft. A new volunteer fire brigade was recently opened in the Ukrainian village of Vinohradivka in the Odessa region. On the same day, the UN Refugee Agency in Ukraine announced that the German government has co-financed 200 portable power stations, which they have handed over to the Olena Zelenska Foundation. They are intended for foster families in Ukraine to stay warm and connected during power outages. On Friday, the State Emergency Service of Ukraine announced that, as part of a visit to Ukraine, the German Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, Rim Alabali Radovan, handed over 5 modern emergency rescue and canine vehicles and related equipment like a set of drones and search equipment, which have been financed by the German government. And last but not least, today, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that 2 MIM-104 Patriot fire units and Bundeswehr stocks, which Germany pledged in August 2025, have now been handed over to the AFU. Funny enough, I actually yesterday made a tweet about it, that the deliveries are scheduled to be completed in the next days, and there was a lot of coverage in the Ukrainian media, which most of them didn't really understand what I was writing, and they just stated that Germany is going to deliver 2 systems in the coming days, which is not at all what I wrote. But fine. But I guess all the news coverage and my tweet actually pressured the Ukrainian government a little bit into publicly recognizing this delivery, or it's a major coincidence that just one day after my tweet and then all the media coverage, especially in Ukraine, that they publicly actually wanted to announce it. But like I said, that would be a a very, very big coincidence. So I think that I might have accidentally pressured the Ukrainian government in publicly admitting weapons deliveries from Germany. No harm done. Everything was publicly known beforehand. Everyone with a laptop, internet access, and a little bit knowledge into the subject could have tweeted what I've tweeted, but yes, still funny from my perspective to see that. Yeah, and last but not least, once again, since Joseph always complains that, or when I don't show a new video, I thought I'd show you a short but still interesting POV clip of a very likely German-delivered Gepard Spark or Cheetah Spark in service with the 1027th Anti-Aircraft Missile and Artillery Regiment, which is in the process of intercepting a target over the skies in Ukraine. And yeah, that's it for this week, and that's already it for my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Gau's segment. Yeah, I do complain. I complain for you, chat, because I want you guys to see cool videos. That he finds some cool videos sometimes. I thought that was a good one. So up next we have Mr. Stanimir Dobrev is going to discuss some updates on the Russian economy. He's going to start with the energy sector and then move out from there. So Mr. Stanimir, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to start again with the Russian gasoline crisis. It's still going. Even though Russian propagandists on Twitter want you to know that it's not actually happening, but it's still ongoing and it's still a big problem for Russians. What hasn't happened for the last few weeks was that we didn't have any regions to add to the map, but this week we added Yaroslav region, and just after I published the map, also we had data that Vologda region also has shortages, even if they are limited. Now, when it comes to the shortages, the news has somewhat decreased, but that's for a variety of reasons. One thing that's being postulated is that it's due to the decrease in the attacks on the major gasoline-producing refineries, which was back in August and September, and these were the main ones when it comes to gasoline. I would point out that when it comes to information we got from the Russian side, repairs, for example, for the Leningrad region, Kirishny Neftorgsynthez, the repair should take more than a few weeks, so it should still be offline by now, the main refining unit. So I don't think that's what's happening fully. I think we can more point towards the Russian authorities asking local news outlets to focus on gasoline price increases according to the Rostat data. And there, I think for the last week, you had just 0.48% increase, whereas the actual prices are much, much higher. And also there's a reduction in Russian motorists driving, as we saw a few weeks ago, that was over 40%. And by now, I think it should be probably in the 50s when it comes to people who've reduced or completely stopped using their cars. We also have secondary info that suggests that gasoline is still in short supply, and it comes from the same refinery. We have news that for Murmansk buyers, which buy from this refinery in Leningrad region, the price of gasoline is over 93,000 rubles per ton. This is still much higher than the gas prices on the Spimex wholesale exchange. And when it comes to gas stations and the big chains having problems, they continue to have such issues. For example, in Ulyansk, we still have shortages at the Lukoil gas station chain and also at independent chains. In Ivanovo, we have issues at the Gazprom Neft gas station chain when it comes to A92 gasoline. And in Rostov, we see that there are issues with diesel and gasoline supply at some of their gas stations. So those still continue to have serious issues. And as always, this week was Novosibirsk continuing to have serious issues with daily stories about gasoline shortages all over the city and all over the region. Now, when it comes to the wholesale market, I want to again bring up the earlier mentioned 93,000 rubles per ton of A92 gasoline, as on Spimex, A92 specifically dropped by 12%, and the A95 gasoline again dropped by a similar percentage, and they were trading in the range of 60 to 70,000 rubles per ton. But behind that, it was the expectation that now that Lukoil and Rosneft are sanctioned, they're going to refine more and sell more domestically that way to make up the cash they were usually making for exporting fuel. and exporting oil. Now that they have no other ways to export it, they might send more of it to the domestic market. But when we come to actual physical shipments of the fuel that was purchased on SPMX, the situation continues to be very difficult for independent traders. They're begging in multiple letters so far the Commodities Exchange to enforce shipments of purchased lots, which means that you can look at the numbers and the prices look good and the volumes sold look good, but behind that, they're not shipping anything. They're just shipping hot air. And if you're a Russian independent fuel trader, you don't have as much pull in the government as, let's say, a Russian state-owned refinery, which can delay your shipments indefinitely, and you can go to court and get no resolution until you go bankrupt. Also, we had the Russian Federal Anti-Monopoly Service. It's going after gas station chains in Crimea, which are mostly independent. And it's going after them now that there is enough supply so that there are not limits on the amount of fuel sold in Crimea, that it's going to file against them cases for having a cartel and raising prices too much. I would say that that's counterproductive because if they bankrupt these chains, there is no one else to actually provide gasoline in terms of retail sales on the peninsula. And there are no major chains that can currently go in and take over these chains. So that will likely artificially further decrease supply to Crimea right now, as they have finally got some supply from other regions. The final part of the Russian gasoline news story this week is that Russia banned the export of sulfur. For those who don't see the connection, sulfur is mostly produced by Russian refineries and the Russian gas processing plants in Astrakhan and Orenburg. All of these have been hit by Ukrainian drone strikes, and they've been taken out of order either completely or partially. So sulfur production from these sources was down 14% for the first 9 months of the year. But for September, which is the last month for which we have stable data, it's down 35%. And it can be viewed as a proxy for the reduction of gasoline production within Russia. So they went from having imports 2 weeks ago to now having a ban on exports of sulfur altogether, because the thing they mention is food security, because the main use of sulfur that's produced this way is for fertilizers and thus the need for Russian agriculture. Now, when it comes to the other map that I published this week, it's focused on the utility shortages in Russia. So they have serious utilities outages every year during the winter season. And this year we started with 250 individual cases. The map is darker in color if there's over 14 outages per the region in the local news stories. Usually there's more outages than I managed to find. For example, for Zavalkaysky Krai, there are over 40 outages of electricity and water just in the capital city of the region, Chita alone, whereas I managed to find online news stories for only 14. So that's why it's in dark blue. And this is the first week where we actually see impacts of Ukrainian attacks on Russian infrastructure, with the Oreo region mentioning their heating outage due to the main power station being hit, which also doubles as a heating supply unit. And we also had multiple issues with electricity being taken offline due to attacks on the Russian electrical grid. Now, next, what we have is the main stories from the Russian economy this week. We start with the GDP for Russia, which, according to the Ministry of Economic Development, for the first 9 months of the year grew by 1%. But we have to mention that for the first quarter of 2025, it was 1.4%. For the second quarter, it was 1%. And for the third quarter, it dropped to 0.6%. And this final number is not seasonally adjusted. I think the ministry said that if we seasonally adjust the number, we're looking at close to zero growth in GDP. Next, we have the Russian Railways news for this week. So for the first 9 months of the year, they reported a net loss of 4.2 billion rubles this year. This is in stark contrast to the 44.7 billion rubles of profit they reported in the first 9 months of 2024, and this is despite revenue growing by 9% to 2.3 billion rubles. Now, next we have a story on the decrease of purchases of physical items of food. So for the period of September to October 2025, we have a sharp decrease of 5% when it comes to food items, with the biggest drops being for milk with 8%, buckwheat and pork by 9%, and rice by 10%. However, if you look at the prices when it comes to ruble values, because these items grew by over 10%, as we have in another graph, you can see that overall the spending of Russians on food didn't decrease, but in practical terms, the amount of food that they actually managed to buy physically decreased over these 2 months, and this is a very sharp decrease. Then we have news on the third quarter currency held by Russian lingo entities. So this is a new record since 2022, and in the accounts of Russian legal entities at Russian banks, there's 3.1 trillion rubles worth of foreign exchange currency. This is one of the reasons why we don't see so much of a drop of the Russian ruble, because there is plenty of foreign currency within Russia, and it's being stockpiled by companies now that they don't have to mandatorily sell it on the exchange after they manage to sell their goods abroad. So basically, Russian oil exporters had to sell something like, I think, 60% last of the foreign currency they earned on the domestic market to ensure that there's enough supply and that the Russian ruble remains strong. They no longer have to do that because a lot of it is piling up. But from October, this has started to decrease significantly despite the growth. And we might see a further decrease by the end of the year because, for example, Russia's finance ministry hopes that by the end of the year, the Russian ruble will weaken to 90 rubles per dollar, so that they might earn more from the oil that they managed to sell all this time. Now, for the other stories this week that are major, we had the restriction of WhatsApp and Telegram. They're further being restricted by the Russian government blocking the SMS messages for verification for these apps, so you can no longer register new apps on top of not being able to make voice calls over them. And as a side effect from the blocking of voice calls on WhatsApp and Telegram in Russia, voice calls over mobile phones have grown by 25% and in Moscow by 50%. Then we have some bad news if you're hoping that India will stop buying Russian oil altogether. So the Indian Oil Corporation, which is India's largest oil company, purchased 5 shipments of Russian oil for delivery in December 2025. And they did that by buying from companies that haven't been sanctioned so far. I want to point out that only 75% of Russian oil production has been sanctioned. Usually around half of it goes to refining domestically. So there's plenty of spare capacity for India to continue to import without touching sanction sources and without Russia going into some shenanigans by shipping oil in the middle of the sea from tanker to tanker. And also something interesting as a final note in terms of major news this week, the most recent SMAC reporting, that is the major macroeconomic projection center for the Russian government, which is headed by the brother of the Russian defense minister, Andrei Belousov, Dmitry Belousov. And it's reporting it for the last several months. It said that the only positive thing for the period of July and August was that there was a salary growth in Russia still and an increase in consumer spending. And when the data from September came in, it turns out that consumer spending is now actually decreasing, even though it's by just 0.1%. But now the only positive thing for the Russian economy is the growing salaries in real terms, and I don't think they're as beneficial when it comes to growing costs of production for Russian companies. Now, when we go to banking, we start with a sleazy practice that Russian banks have started employing against Russians. They started increasing the duration of loans without notifying the people who've taken out those loans. So if you increase the duration, the period for which the interest accumulates, if you're not paying the main part of the loan first, the period for which it's going to accumulate is going to extend, and thus you're going to have to pay a lot more in interest. And Russians have started realizing that they now owe the banks far more than they previously owned. And I don't think that the Russian central bank has yet intervened to close this loophole of basically extortion against Russian citizens by the Russian banking system. Also, we had the financial results of Sberbank for the first 9 months of the year. Their net profit rose by 9% to 1.3 trillion rubles. For the first 9 months, it rose by 6.5% to 1.3 trillion rubles, and for the third quarter, it rose by 9% to 448 billion rubles. Again, I want to point out that this is a bank whose CEO went specifically to Putin to tell him that banks were not making enough money and were losing money actually because of nebulous high interest rates. Nothing could be further from the truth for this bank in particular. And also we have data on the car loans for the first 9 months of the year. They decreased by 45.5% compared to 2024, the first 9 months of that year, coming in at slightly above 1 trillion rubles. And the biggest drop was in the Moscow region, with 48.2% decrease in the volume of car loans being offered. Now, when it comes to commodities, this week we only have some coal news and some gas and oil news. So for Russian coal, they have some good news because China continues to buy Russian coal. In this case, it's buying thermal coal and Russian coking coal, and prices rose by 4.6 to 4.7% in the third week of October, reaching the highest they have been since the end of 2024. And for thermal coal of 5,500 kilocalories, it's around $77 per ton from the Far Eastern ports, which are the preferred route for China to buy coal from. When it comes to gas and oil, we had the information that the state-owned oil company Tatneft, which is focused on Tatarstan, for the first 9 months of the year, its net profit dropped by 39.33% to 104.6 billion rubles, and the revenue of the company dropped by 9.7% to 1.04 trillion rubles. This is another case where Russia's oil sector is feeling significant pain when it comes to their profits this year, despite recent recovery somewhat of the oil prices. Also, we had news that the Yakut fuel and energy company, which is focused on the Yakut LNG project with a planned capacity of 17.7 million tons of LNG, has actually stopped working altogether on the project. And this is directly due to Western sanctions on the project, making it impossible for them to purchase equipment and build the necessary production lines for the project to actually start exporting LNG. When it comes to construction news, this week we got news that for the first 9 months of 2025, when it comes to housing, the commissioning decreased by 12% when compared to Q3 of 2020. I'm sorry, for the Q3 of 2025. Commissioning decreased by 20% when it comes to comparison to the third quarter of 2024. And when it comes to interesting data points, we had the retail sales of beer for the first 9 months of 2025 decreased by 16.9%. And for the third quarter, the drop was even steeper at 17.9%. The reason for this is the 17.5% increase in the price of beer over the year. And some also say the colder summer, but I don't think if you're an avid beer drinker, you're going to stop drinking beer because it's not hot enough. Similarly, for vodka, there was a decrease in retail sales by 4.5% for the first 9 months to 54.46 million deciliters. Cognac sales also dropped by 9.7% to 9.29 million deciliters. And for alcohol with a strength over 9%, they dropped by 2.1% or to 88.16 deciliters. Again, this drop is mainly due to the increase in price of Russian vodka and cognac. These are regulated in Russia by the financial ministry, which sets the minimal price for their sale and also raises the excise tax every year. We also had some bad news for the Russian automotive industry. When it comes to semi-trailers in Russia, for the first 9 months, sales dropped by 60.2% to 14,460 units. And in September, the drop continues to accelerate to 62.7% compared to September of 2024, and by 6.1% when compared to August of 2025, which is why in one of our previous broadcasts, I wasn't sure what KAMAZ was planning to do with returning to a full 5-day work week when the sales of trucks and trailers and similar stuff that it produces are actually continuing to decrease faster than in the earlier parts of the year. Also, when it comes to agricultural machinery, the drop in sales slowed down to just 26.5%. For the 9 months of for the first 9 months of 2025, where it was 32.8% in the first quarter of 2025. Again, however, the market doesn't expect a recovery in 2026, and it expects to face even more decreases till the end of the year when compared to 2024. And 2024 was already a very poor year for them. So even a slight recovery in 2026 would not help the market all that much. Now, when it comes to the final things that I cover usually this week, we have inflation for the period from the 21st to the 27th of October. The official Россtat inflation was at 0.16%. The inflation for October so far has been 0.79%, and the inflation for the year has been 5.11%. I don't think it will hit for October alone over 1%, as was possible if it could come in closer to the previous weeks at around 0.22-23%. But I have to point out again that they only factor in gasoline increase in price of just 0.38%. So the higher gasoline in most independent gas stations and in some of the larger chains is actually largely being ignored by Russian official inflation. So you should look at it as only a guide point and then add a few percentage more because gasoline is spiking up that much higher. For the final item of news, we had 2 auctions again this week by the Russian Ministry of Finance. Both had a yield of over 15%. For the first one, they managed to sell only 24.7 billion rubles. And the yield here was much lower at 15.08%. And in the second auction, where they managed to sell more, they managed to sell 87.5 billion rubles. And the yield this time was closer to previous higher selling auctions at 15.34%. But if they want to hit their targets that they've set for the final quarter with the increase in debt sales of over 2.2 trillion rubles, they need to manage to sell a lot more debt every week. And I think that's it for me for this week.
Well, thank you, Stanimir. Oh, go ahead, Erlend.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we have a bonus video actually from one or several of the attacks that put out some of the energy infrastructure. So, Stanimir, do you think that this is kind of a new revolution for what Ukraine is doing and able to do?
Yeah, this is definitely a new thing. Previously, it was mostly the Russians underinvesting in infrastructure that was causing serious problems. Now they have this also to follow, and some of the outages are much longer than the usual outages they have when something breaks. When it comes to the electricity grid, when it comes to the heating outages, I think that one lasted for over than a day for the entirety of Oreo, I think. So that is also major in terms of how much it impacted because the entire thermal power plant was offline. But when it comes to outages in terms of repairs, because it was a centralized repair, it was easier to fix than if you have a water hammer going through all the pipes that are providing hot water to Russians in these towns, where you have to dig them up and then replace them.
And I just wanted to mention that it's not something that Russia can easily replace, these transformers, right?
Yeah, they cost money, and not a little bit of money. And I have to point out that some of the Russian grid operators, like Rushydro, which operated, however, mostly in the Far East and Siberia, had to be subsidized last year because it was losing money over too expensive Russian coal that it was buying for its thermal power plants. So not all of them are doing great when it comes to their costs.
Yeah. Well, I thought we would spend that 1 minute and a half to show the video and dive a little bit deeper into the new dimension of Ukrainian strikes on energy infrastructure in Russia. Joseph, do you have any more questions, topics for Stanimir?
No, I was gonna yield my time to you, Mr. Erlend. But yeah, I don't know. We can cover some stuff if you want.
That was just a question. Well, so thank you. I guess we are going to first thank Stanimir. I know that you can't stay on for as long as normal, so thank you for your really, really in-depth update with another new topic this time. And then we are going to go to Jay. Welcome, Jay.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Perfect. Also, hello to the audience. Good evening from Germany. We will do a little frontline update, as the last has been, I think, almost two months ago. Not sure, but so there are some changes, and we will go through it on the map. I don't know. Can you share my screen? Is it already shared?
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, I think we will start in the south. Like, I want to go to like every AO and get some overview over notable events and maybe some changes. And we start in the south with Kherson. No changes on the front line. We have a river here. It's very obvious. Notable events. It was a bit interesting. Like, actually, like Russia ran some kind of psyops campaign recently. I think it was like 2 weeks ago or 10 days. I'm not really sure, but it was actually pretty large psyops. What happened? I will zoom in a bit. Like what they claimed, and then not only like this was like they had reports on their own state TV. So for them it was pretty significant, but actually not much happened. And they claimed that they had like some kind of foothold here in on this island in southern Kherson. And yeah, they had large reports about it. Actually, nothing of that was really true. Like also, people looked it up. There was no real footage of soldiers here on this island. Actually, it was reversed. You had some happy, like dancing soldiers from the Ukrainian sides, from the coastal defense brigades, which showed presence here in the south. So yeah, with strange Russian psyops. I like from my suggestion why they did it is it was meant for the domestic audience, I would guess, like to sell it as some kind of fake victory or whatever. Like, but yeah, that didn't happen. What actually happens is like the usual atrocities, of course, with the hunt on civilians, and they did large shellings into the center of Pokrovsk with not Pokrovsk, sorry, Kherson, with BM-21, with Grad and airstrikes and everything, artillery barrages. Like they're just shelling civilians, but there was no like river crossing over the Dnipro, so that was just fake.
But this thing started with this Osvodomitil Alex, right?
You mean the psyops?
Yeah.
I'm not. Could well be possible. Like, yeah, you don't know, it's spread. Yeah, maybe from that channel you have some Telegram channels, and then it's spreading, and then you have your invisible whatever campaign. I'm not 100% sure if what's from this account. That account is the account with the usual like attacks with drones on civilians, elderly people. So this is like one of the worst Telegram accounts, in like even for Russian standards. So yeah.
I just wanted to put it into context that this guy was pushing this tie-ups very hard, and then he was showing videos of other islands, which was very easy to geolocate. And at the same time, there were MLR barrages on the same place that
Yeah.
he was claiming that they had captured.
Very and they just showed the footage without any, like, you couldn't see soldiers. Usually when the Russians have the flag raises, then when they're not done by FPV, then you see at least 1 or 2 soldiers or even more. Anyway, not much from there. So we go to the next AO. This is not particularly good. I also talked about this area, Stepnohirsk, Primorsk, south of Zaporizhia. I will zoom out a bit so you can see it's not far away from this very large city. And as I wouldn't say spoiler, but like I said, they will try to advance here, and that actually what happened. It's still a gray zone. They haven't really consolidated. You can also see a Ukrainian vehicle here in this gray zone, but still there are advances here, and also they try to get into Stepnohirsk and control at least half of this former music school. And this is also like contested now. And yeah, what I want to emphasize here is it's when the Russians advance further. When we see here, I go to the city center. It's about 25 kilometers, and if the Ukrainians are not able to like stall this Russian advance, like the Ukrainians already sent reinforcements here. They sent a battalion from 33rd Assault Regiment, but it may have stabilized the situation a bit, but it was not enough. And when the Russians advance further, my grim prediction is that at some point, if these advances are not stalled, maybe the Ukrainians have to evacuate the first time a really large city in this war. I hope it will not come to this, like we will not talk about this year, but it is a potential scenario for 2026. So we have to wait and see. It's a very important area the Ukrainians have to hold as good as possible. One caveat. I want to talk about this. You see this here on the map. This is like a river, and then we have several of these. I'm not sure if these were fishing farms, these ponds on the river. And you get an impression that it's actually like a really good natural barrier against Russian advances when they go further north. It does not look like that on the map. I will show it on Copernicus, so the people. There's a reload. So from this actual, what you see here, this white natural barrier, there's not much left because since the dam was blown up, it looks totally like everything here is dried up. Like this is the water layer of Copernicus, and here you have actually only a tiny bit of this river and these two former fish farms, ponds, whatever, that actually contain water. You can see it even better there. Is it good visible? Yeah. So that's the natural barrier. The river here is dried up, so this is not really an advantage, but you would think for like a good defense. Just want to point that out. That's this classic also, and check your maps. Because the satellite maps are like at some point it will be updated, but yeah, it's not like it looks like. Okay, so you have to carefully watch this. Could be a potential problem for Ukraine, especially for all those civilians here. Yeah, that's what I want to point out.
Jay, can you zoom back into the gray area next south of Primorsk?
Sure.
So one thing I wanted to comment on here is that for Russia to actually hold this area, they will have to advance up to Stepnorishki. What is it? Stepnorish?
Stepnohirsk.
Stepnohirsk.
Yeah.
Because that kind of very thin, narrow advance is just not tenable over time. It's impossible to resupply if Ukraine actually wants to cut them off. So that the only way that Russia can actually move up here is that they will have to take over Stepnohirsk and move up the road between Stepnohirsk and Primorsk.
Yeah, good point. They also will have to expand this area here, because I zoom a bit in, you see this is all like small houses. So yeah, of course they also will have to expand their control. It's a fair point.
Yeah, so it's not as easy as one may think, that they broke through and then they can continue that breakthrough. It doesn't work that way, really. But still, it's really concerning, especially if we think about the fact that this has been an area that hasn't seen a lot of movement for a very long time.
Yeah, it actually was here, was the front line, like for many months, and then the Russians started to slowly get control of this area. Also, it's slowly over months, but yeah, as you said, it is like a slow creep towards Zaporizhzhia. But I think we're through with it. Have to look a bit at the time. In this area, it's like not very concerning in the sense, like, the Russians are not doing much there. They're like, I also said it last time on the stream. Usually the Russians are trying to yeet like an armored assault, a mechanized assault into Mala Tokmachka. And they also did it. I will not go back and show it because it takes a bit time with the map. But yeah, you see the arrows here and here from the south, also from Robotine, where the Ukrainian counter-offensive in 2023 was. And hasn't really shown results. The Ukrainians, like the Ukrainian resistance, is very effective and stiff there. Huge Russian losses. The bigger problem for this whole area around, like, it has defense layers, it mines, everything, is not being frontally assaulted, but we go to the next area, and yeah, I'm not sure what I should think about this here. You can see the Russian advances towards this road, and the larger settlements are here, is Hulyapol in the south and Pokrovsk in the north. And this could potentially be a problem if this continues, to like basically get the whole south outflanked at some point. We're not there yet. But yeah, the Russian advances here are like significant and relatively fast on the pace compared to like what we're used to. Like, what are your thoughts on that, Erlend?
Yeah, I think that this is probably the most concerning area of the front line for me. I don't understand, or I think I do know why, but from an operational, strategic, or more long-term point of view, this is probably where the Russians should have put their main assault. They've definitely sent a lot of resources there, but nowhere near as much as they've used to capture Pokrovsk. But this is a lot more significant long term for both sides than Pokrovsk is in itself.
Yes, and they like, from my understanding, they try to like reach this road, and while you see this advance is quite significant after the capture from Velika Novosilka, and they actually like pretty close. This is almost FPV range. And when this happens, usually you will see like vehicles on this road getting destroyed when they advance further. So probably the most, like, the baddest area on the front line currently. There seem to be problems with the command and control, especially in the south. There were reports about atrocious commanders, like abuse of alcohol was claimed, and also like lying about positions. This is in general, like, not saying that it's only like happening on the Ukrainian side. I'm relatively sure it's even a like greater problem in the Russian infosphere. But if you send troops into like positions where already like Russians are, there's really problems in command and control. Other fair point is the Ukrainians simply don't have enough troops to cover everything. It's a very open area. It's hard to defend after the Russians. Like, there are some small rivers, but they were partly already crossed, and so there's a disparity in forces between the Ukrainian and Russians. The Russians have obviously more troops there, and I'm not sure how it will develop, but for now we can assume that this advances will continue. Or like, would you say it otherwise?
No, I think we're probably going to see it. I don't think we're going to see an acceleration in this area, but it is very concerning that they are moving towards the highway that goes up to Pokrovsk, because that is going to be a lot more problematic. Pokrovsk leads to Dnipro, or the highway from Pokrovsk leads to Dnipro. It's going to take them a very, very long time to go up and threaten Dnipro itself, but that is very, very scary long term. I really don't think that the Russians will last that long at this pace, but still, it is very concerning.
Yeah.
Also, Pokrovsk is it's not evacuated. People live there, and they do, and also in a lot of these villages that you see going west from where the advance is.
Yes, and it's also like it was and still is a very important logistics hub. And by the way, all those bridges there were also destroyed, which further complicate logistics. The Russians did some airstrikes. I just wanted to show the orbit here from the Unit Observer team. So the 20th Army Corps is deployed there, and most importantly, the 110th Mechanized is like the core of, like the core brigade of that Army Corps. And just for a bit of understanding, the 110th, they always had a hard job. That was the brigade that defended Avdiivka, and of course suffered losses, and later they had to defend Velika Novosilka. Like, whatever one wants to think about these guys, they never have the really easiest tasks, rather the most hardest. But yeah, we will see how it evolves. When we go to the north, it's looking better, way better. Like, here were also some advances that basically have been stalled lately. There was not much activity, I think, because the Russians just prioritized the southern area. And here in Novopavlivka, I think it's a very good defended AO, a very good defense parameter. We'll zoom in a bit. Like, you have a river here in the south, and from my understanding, what I heard, what we discussed, like, the Ukrainians have very good surveillance, good EW in that area, and they have very good awareness what the Russians are doing. So they have an advantage in information. They are really prepared. What usually happens is that some Russians, they usually come here from the south, from the Zelenia High area, and try to cross these small rivers here. And that's exactly when usually you have this drone footage here. You have individual soldiers who cross this river, got into this area, but usually when they start to go into this area, they stay there. Like, there's no real penetration. So far, this is like really good looking sector. Hope it stays that way. Yeah, and now we come to the focal point. Do you want to start, Erlend? Like, some more from a general perspective, what are your thoughts? Like, on the area in Pokrovsk?
This has been Russia's main effort during the whole year, and even since last year. They spent more than a year trying to capture Pokrovsk, with several attempts to outflank it. We had, of course, in August the push towards Dobropilya and this kind of bunny ears that people baptized this advance, where Ukraine successfully managed to eliminate most of the problem, but I think that effort has probably taken a lot of resources away that could have been spent resupplying and rotating forces in Pokrovsk, and I don't think that the Ukrainians expected this to happen, and or more importantly, I don't think they expected it to be that difficult to remove all these pockets that the Russians had inside this area. And I just want to mention that the advance was never a real and complete control of territory, rather a lot of small pockets where Russians had dug in and managed for some reason to resupply them with basically infantry walking most of the time.
Yeah, it took a long time because the Ukrainians had I think the approach is good. It was not like throwing everything against it, but they just rather methodically redeployed units around these former bunny ears, and they were not really counterattacking in a sense, but just throwing drones at it. There were some small arms clashes, but yeah, the Russians were more like they were hungered out a bit, and their movement got shut down, and so Ukraine was indeed successfully able to clear these areas here in the north also. But yeah, as I said, it took a lot of resources and time with that approach apparently, and in the meanwhile, the Russians went into Pokrovsk and also put a lot of pressure here towards Rodinska, or to like actually form another pincer. So what you can see is a kind of a salient or cauldron which has formed, and the Ukrainians obviously will have to retreat from this area at some point. When it already happened, like it could be that while we are talking, the Ukrainians already hear from this area or from Mirnograd, maybe exfilling, maybe not, but at some point it will happen. Like from my understanding, general perspective, I also like estimated from my like personal subjective view, I expected Pokrovsk to fall earlier. Then the front line got like kind of rearranged the defense parameter, and when the party stepped up and did that very well, every unit had its sector, and while the Ukrainians had the town, could penetrate everything around it. This worked really well, but it all started to crumble and crack a bit when the Russians managed to enter the city the first time in the summer. There was a bit of a weakness. I will do something here. Yeah, I will use the Ukraine control map for a second. The problem was more on the in the western part of the city. This brigade is exhausted. It's really exhausted. They were there like in the beginning of the year. They never really had rotations, and since summer there are like reports that they basically have run out of infantry, so they are severely understrength. They will have their drone teams, so as a consequence, the Russians mostly were able to enter Pokrovsk here from Shevchenko, Svirove, like this into the city, and that really complicated the whole like defense of the area, because it had some kind of a bit like of a chain effect on the adjacent units, which were also like got increased pressure and had to bit like step in. And yeah, now we are here. I think this is like the last call when we do this like frontline segment. It's the final stage of the Pokrovsk defense. It's absolutely unsure if it will be like the same in a week or maybe even longer, but it's very, very like unlikely that the Ukrainians will regain those areas. The Russian presence is too strong. Like they have more men there than the Ukrainians. Counterattacking would be desperate, not very advisable. And yeah, what was really kind of like, some people compared it to Bakhmut. It's actually like it's completely the opposite. The Ukrainians don't have like large forces here. Maybe in overall, I would estimate maybe slightly over 1,000 soldiers overall, and the Russians have more. And I think the best approach so far when we talk about the current situation is actually to try to hold the railway line inside the city as good as they can. To consolidate in that area, but we can see also there were like low amounts, like stragglers, or how you call it, of Russians even crossing that railway line. But that's probably where the delay should happen, that the Ukrainians can at least hold these northern parts here for a time to allow the troops here to retreat when it's like to exfil when it's necessary.
Yeah. I just want to mention that I think a lot of people didn't expect Pokrovsk to last this long because they thought that Ukraine didn't have proper defenses there, which ended up being untrue. They had some of the best defenses along the whole front line and had concealed them very well. And this has been probably how they managed to keep Pokrovsk for such a long time, and definitely has attrited the Russian forces massively. I mean, if you just think about the insane amount of infantry that they've spent trying first to encircle Pokrovsk and then straight on head assault towards the city over pretty open landscape. The Ukrainians have put a lot of Russians to sleep in this area for well over a year. And I don't really see the strategic benefit compared to the losses that the Russians have taken in this area. I'd much rather say that if Bakhmut was an attempt to attrit the Russian forces, it failed, but here it definitely did succeed compared. Ukraine hasn't spent that much resources defending it compared to the absolutely enormous losses on the Russian side.
Yeah, speaking of not only in this area, I just wanted to highlight a bit because you can see all the geolocations where like this was all attacks on Russians. Not all, like only from the last months. And I want to highlight, sorry, I'm moving a bit away from this area, but I think this is not really Pokrovsk. Yeah, it was the area towards the bunny ears, but where the Russians really tried to put pressure on to push here into Volodimirka. Like this is like a very strong resistance point from the Ukrainians, and these red dots. Those are all vehicles abandoned, damaged, or destroyed. In all those mechanized assaults the Russian unfolded when the weather became like worse, like more foggy and rainy, more difficult for drone operators. And yeah, and the Russians started their like this. I would see this as a notable event since we all were not sure when it would be unfolding, but yeah, with the bad weather appearance in October, the Russians started several mechanized assault into this area, even here in this area, which is a bit complicated. You have also swamps there. There are some APCs who had learned swimming, actually, some Russians, and all they could like. The only gain is that this is now a gray area. This was like Ukrainian controlled, and now because of this half dozen of mechanized assault in the past weeks, it's now a gray area. But the Russians have like really large losses, not Avdiivka dimension, but I would say in 2022, 2025, I think it is the most concentrated area from my mind. Or what do you think?
Yeah, and I mean the Russians haven't really used any large scale armored assaults the whole year, except for the push that they had the last month towards trying to encircle Pokrovsk. Basically, the assaults themselves haven't been successful, but I do think they had an effect on the last few weeks, and the development that we've seen with the Russians being more able to bring stragglers into Pokrovsk, eventually more organized DRG units, and unfortunately we also saw some absolutely horrendous footage and also some accounts of civilians being executed in Pokrovsk by Russian and infiltrating units. So
I remember it was. I think it was here on the railway. Tracks. Yeah, it was horrible. Like to watch the footage, and it was just civilians were shot in the open, basically.
Yeah, and those were the ones that we saw in footage. As far as I understand it, there's been more. So, you know, we can ridicule all these armored assaults, and the Russians absolutely haven't achieved their goals with the armored assaults, I think, but the effect of them are definitely noticed for the Ukrainians anyways. But yeah, I mean, overall, it won't have a large impact on the war. It's a very small city. I think it's 77th largest city in Ukraine or something. It's not a.
You have to add Miernorat at least. It's a bit of an agglomeration.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, it's definitely the most notable event of the year for the Russians on the battlefield. But still, I mean, strategic impact is minimal, in my opinion.
Yeah, true. It was one of the main goals for the Russians, and they had aims to capture it like a year ago, and so they're a bit back in their schedule. Last thing I think I want to go on, but yeah, there was also a notable event this week when Gur appeared with Halos, with Blackhawks, with UH-60s, and they landed here. I'm not sure. I don't want to talk about it extensively because it was very polarized. And do you want to leave some thoughts on that, or should I do it? How do you think? Okay, I'll start here. First of all, so I will not go back into the map. It has some problems with loading, so I just will safely leave it in that mode. First of all, there was a misunderstanding when this landing happened, and some people think misinterpreted it. It was a bit earlier than we thought it was. It's almost a week ago. It was on last Tuesday, I think, on October 28th, around when this happened, when actually kilos flew in from here, from the north, west, and then landed some troops there. Suggestion, why do this? Yeah, it's not some PR thing. It does make sense on a military scale, because it's very difficult to pull in. You see these streets here are already contested. So it's difficult to drive into the town safely. With this road, it's also very complicated. It's all under drone surveillance and in reach of FPV drones. And so I think the idea to fly in some teams with the aim to stabilize, as I said, maybe this railway line or some kind of defense perimeter here, is not that wrong if you consider that you don't have the roads, you don't have to use the roads, and you can do it very fast and leave. So when people said it does not make sense or it was like a bad idea, I don't think this is the case. I think it was kind of well planned. Of course, it's risky in that sense that halos could get intercepted by FPVs theoretically. We saw it from the Ukrainian side already. But it's not that the Russians have super strong air defense, like deployed close in this whole area. This whole area is a logistical nightmare. Like most of the soldiers here, like that reached actually Pokrovsk, a lot of like died before they reached it. But those who reached Pokrovsk, they almost all come by foot. And so it was risky to deploy like let helos land there, but it was not like suicidal or something. It was like there was a plan. That's my point. Do you guys have anything to add?
No, I would say that special operations have a lot of different mission sets, and securing and clearing up infiltration forces while your own forces are retreating is definitely within those mission sets. And I think there was a lot of confusion, and I mainly I think that a lot of the people that were talking a lot about the helicopter infill has no idea about how OSINT works, and I think that was quite evident from a lot of the posting that was happening. And secondly, it was also evident that most of the people commenting on this, and especially in social media, also have no clue about how special operations forces operate and what their mission sets are.
It does not, like, they don't have to be offensive, and incursionally they can also help in a defensive way to which implies that it's some kind of emergency call, at least. Or would you disagree? I mean, it's not very usual to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a whole lot of these situations during the war, and I think there's also a lot of things that we don't know about and how things have been working out during the war. And generally, I think that we should be wiser than assuming things about how special operation forces operate and what actually happened when we just have a glimpse of a video and we have no date on that video given to us when it's published.
Yeah.
Great.
Very good point. And I think with that we finish it. While the Ukrainians had some successes here, as I said, probably like the last stage of like Ukrainian presence in Pokrovsk. But we have to go on. Have to look at the time. So next, Konstantinivka. This is also like one of the main goals for the Russians, of course. I think defense is relatively good. They still hold some power in these areas. I would not have expected that also here, around the Klebanbek reservoir. At some point, I see Russians entering like in the same like pattern as in Pokrovsk, like to the outskirts. Will probably happen sooner or later, but so far it hasn't really happened. Konstantinivka is like, it's difficult to be in that city because it's also, when we zoom a bit out, it's a bit salientish because you can start drones here or here or here, and like a lot of vehicles get attacked. There was also footage from this, like, not sure if people have seen it, where like Ukrainian press officers, like they escorted some journalists, also like shot down drones. And I would say in overall it's relatively holding good. At some point it may be contested. For now, not yet.
I just want to point out that there are a couple of geographical features around Konstantinivka that favors the Ukrainian defense quite a lot compared to how the situation was in Pokrovsk. You have quite a large body of water. There is a river. There are some heights actually where the Russians have taken some of the high ground, but not all of it. And but assault. So the thing is, having the high ground when it's not very significant now compared to how it was before dronization happened
It's
is
less important, huh?
yeah, it doesn't make actually it may be an advantage not to be on the high ground because you're incredibly exposed. There is a lot less concealment available in less buildings, less trees, etc. So in this specific case, the high ground is actually acting as some sort of barrier, because every time the Russians try to get up on those small high grounds that are around the city, they will be spotted. And I think the Russians were wise not to push very hard against Konstantinivka, because even though the Russians do have some control over the road with drones, the road is going.
You're speaking about this road?
Yeah, the main road.
That's the main Ukrainian logistical road. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of attacks on this road, but it seems like the Ukrainians have managed to keep it somewhat operational compared to how the situation was in Pokrovsk.
Oh yeah.
So unless the Russians manage to push further towards that road, I don't think the city is going to fall. I think it's not going to fall until they cut off that road.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The Ukrainians have built some pretty impressive drone tunnels on this road. Like, it's really large highway, like not like an autobahn or something, but yeah, it is. I think it has 4 lanes.
It's a highway in Ukraine.
Yeah, it's yeah. Sorry, I should not have compared it with an autobahn. We will cut this out after the stream.
No, but
it's a very, like, you can pull a lot of traffic through this, so it's a highway. You're absolutely right.
Which is very important when it comes to military logistics, that you have more than 2 lanes going each way. Yeah. Because if
to block.
Yeah, because if one vehicle gets destroyed on the road, that doesn't block the entire lane of traffic. So
yeah, good point.
So that is a very important feature which Pokrovsk did not have the luxury of enjoying.
It's very good that you note that, because we will come like soon to an area where like this situation where like a vehicle can block or like really constrain a road. We will have this example soon, but let's continue. I think next important area is Siversk, Liman. The Russians made, I would say, significant gains. Last time on the stream, we talked about it. Erlend was not here. I did that with Vincent, our pal. We like pointed out that the forest, Serebiansky Forest, was a very good defense line. It was super stable, but it got like outflanked in the north and also here in Serebryanka in the south. And there was not much gain since that time. But of course, after the loss of the forest, or like the Ukrainians had to withdraw from there, now Liman is a bit under pressure, or will be in the future. It's difficult to defend this area here in the north. Because you can hide very well. When you have like small infantry teams, it's hard to keep track of them, to have surveillance. And yeah, it will be interesting. Siversk is still relatively stable, but it's very close. It's now really a front city. It's not that you have like a belt of defenses anymore. So this will be contested sooner or later. The question is where. I would say the Russians will probably try to outflank it, and either it would happen here from the north, from Yampir, when they advance here, or here, and they are in the back. This is really likely happening at some point, but they will try it at least. or here in the south from Zvanivka. Like they will probably not try to directly like attack the city, but rather outflank it as usually. But yeah, we have to see. For now, it's still holding. Could change in the future. Any thoughts?
I mean, this has been a very, very favorable defensive area for Ukraine geographically speaking. The loss of most of the Siversky forest is definitely an advantage for the Russians, that the Ukrainians don't have major defensive positions south of Kuzmina anymore. They do have positions in the forests going west, but I don't know how much really is left of that forest. I've seen some footage from the Siversky forest and this area, and it's been burned a lot down. And
yeah, the trees don't have foliage anymore. Like after more than 2, I think almost 3 years of fighting there, it's not really a forest anymore. Still, it granted a lot of cover. Yeah, it was very good defense terrain, even when the trees were not that tree-ish anymore.
But it's not somewhere that is super easy to move a lot of logistics through unless you construct a road, which the Russians might well do. So if they want to really advance through this forest towards Liman, they will have some challenges. But I suspect that the fighting in Liman is going to tick up. And also, this has been an area where Ukraine haven't been, they didn't need to put as many forces there as they did in other places along the front line. But I think now they will be forced to.
Yeah, it was very easy to defend also, like they had all the strong points like here Bilorivka in the past. You could defend it well with few good troops, and now this will change. There will be a transition. But you're right that probably what we will see here soon is also like light infantry infiltration, like a couple of people. You won't see a mechanized assault or something here. Maybe more like here in the northern part, but also unlikely. Okay, let's move on. Time is ticking. Yeah, this area, I'm not sure what I should say. Like here we had like 3rd Azov defending in that area. They sometimes counterattacked. There are not really like notable events or like map changes, so for now it's good. I think it's due to the Russians considering it's not that important. Like they haven't really gathered a lot of forces there. The Ukrainians can hold it. Of course, you have your shellings here. It all happens, but no real changes. And I think now we come to Kupiansk. Difficult area.
Yeah.
Very difficult. Yeah. So Kupiansk, what no one really understands, like most of the city is contested. I would say this northern part is already more or less gone. I don't think it will change anymore. It's too late, and somehow, like it should be noted that it all comes to this very difficult terrain with, as you mentioned, with ridges, with the river, with swamps, everything, and that it comes from this side of the river is so astonishing, not from the other side where, like in theory, it would be way easier to like amass some forces. No, all from the left side here of the Oskar River and into the city actually. Yeah, and
I mean, I wouldn't say that it is I wouldn't say that it's 100% lost, but it would definitely take a considerable amount of effort from Ukraine to cut off the Russian supplies there, and but it seems to be going towards a loss. Well,
it is too late. Like at some point when the Russians were like more in the northern part, yes, but the Ukrainian command was inactive about it or did not prioritize it. We don't know why. I don't like. That's all I can say. The thing is, the whole operation, like the whole AO, will change soon, and that's what I want to explain quickly. It's logistics, and we talked about the vehicles and the roads and blocking, and especially river crossings. And like some person, like from the information sphere, I personally respect. I don't know who was it anymore. Compared it to the Russian situation in Kherson in 2022, when the Russians controlled most of these, like, is it the right bank? I think, yeah, it's the right bank from the Dnipro River, and the Ukrainians cut down the bridges here in Antonivka, and Kakhovka was also interrupted when the dam was still there, and so the Russians had the river in the back of the wall, and yeah, finally what happened is the logistics were so constrained, so they had to pull like back to the other side of the river. The Oskil is not that large as or not that wide as the Dnipro is, obviously, but it's the same scenario in general thinking. There are like two roads or like two river crossings the Ukrainians have. Like here was a potential third one, but this is not more under control, as we can see. The northern bridge is already gone. But in the past they could use it, but yeah, Russians too close, and it's a very like difficult situation for the Ukrainian forces on the right side of the Oskil in this area. It's still like very good defense perimeter, like in theory, but when the logistics are constrained, you can't really do much. And there's one crossing here. There's the northern one in Zadove. And that is all like this is in FPV range. Like you have FPVs flying around there like on a daily basis. And I also will show you how it looks like. So this is footage from a Russian drone. It's reverse, like sorry, I couldn't flip I didn't want to mirror the image. It's confusing, but this is from the Russian perspective. The drone is coming from the north. This is like southwards, and here you can see how this looks like. I go back to the map for a second. So originally, no, this was, sorry, my bad. It's better with the satellite. So originally, here was just a bridge, pretty well, and of course, this bridge got destroyed, as all bridges get destroyed. This is the former bridge here in the middle. This was the bridge. They removed it, the spans, and the Ukrainians made two crossings. This is the northern one, and you have earthworks, and then you have this small engineering bridge, and this can get blocked very easily. Like I geolocated a vehicle which was exactly on this on the span, and actually the Ukrainians managed to dump it into the river, so this is kind of cleared. But then you see how difficult it is to cross this river under drone threat. The better like river crossing is this one. You can't really see it that good in the footage, but that's just quite like it's okay. You can cross it with one vehicle, but of course, and that's what Erlend said earlier, if one vehicle gets targeted there by a FPV drone, and the vehicle will probably only be damaged, but the whole river crossing is blocked. Very complicated. And that makes it very hard to basically supply the forces on the eastern side of Kupiansk. The other example is not looking better. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Yeah, this is the southern crossing. You have a railroad bridge destroyed, and what you can't see it so good on the map, but here is also a road. And I will show you the other image. This is how it looks like. Also, this is drone footage. Here you have the railroad bridge, obviously destroyed, but you have no trains there. It doesn't matter. And this is like they also made some kind of bridge with earthworks as fundament, which was a good crossing. And it still is, but you can see this is like the aftermath of a tornado airstrike, which happened a week ago, 10 days. And I would say it's fixable. I'm not an engineer, but I would say like, yeah, they have to close this gap. But this will just happen again and again. This is really your Achilles heel, if you would say so. logistics wise, and of course the Russians know how to handle this. Yeah, they will like try to break these supply routes, and yeah, you all have like sometimes piles of vehicles got destroyed, which yeah leads me to the conclusion. This whole area is more or less compromised. The troops here will have to pull back soon because the Russians outflank them. This river crossing, the northern one, is also not that far away from like advancing Russian troops. And at some point, I think, I'm not sure when it happens, and it may be a slow process, but at some point the Ukrainians will have to give up the presence here, I would say. Yeah. It's also not worth to hold it if you lose so many jeeps and supply trucks, in my personal opinion. When every second or every third pickup truck gets damaged or has to be abandoned, like that's the positive thing I would say, because I watched a lot of footage of Russian drone attacks. Is that the casualties seem not to, like, at least from the footage I see, I can say the casualties are not that high. Usually when these pickup trucks from the Ukrainian side are getting attacked, mostly also by fiber optics, the crew can escape from the vehicle. Like, you have to open your doors, run out of it, get distance 5 or 10 meters away from the impact. The drones are not that fast as it often seems in the footage, because in the footage the speed is pitched a bit. So when the soldiers in the vehicles see they are tailed by a drone or like close to be attacked, they usually just immediately brake, get out of the vehicle, and casualties, yeah, maybe you get a shrapnel or something, but I did not see a lot of people not alive anymore. So a bit of good news, but still logistics are really constrained here. It's not looking good, I have to say it.
Yep.
Okay. I think we're almost through. We're also close to an hour. So to conclude it, like, here are some minor Russian advances in the last couple of months, very slow and steadily. They have occupied a bit, and it's rather minor, I would say, not much to talk about it. It's also a bit of a gray zone. There's not a lot of footage, but I'm not worried about this. It's simply not that important. There's nothing strategic here. Vovchansk, there was a minor advance here, actually. Recently, in the last 2 weeks, the Russians occupied this area, and it's on the other side of the river, so it's mini advance. But then overall, if you zoom out, the whole, like, Vovchansk, in the initial Vovchansk offensive from the Russians brought them into the town. This town is not more, like, it's just rubbish. It's a pile of rubbish. There's not so many shelling. But really, like, that was not really a Russian success. And as long as the Ukrainians maintain their defense positions here in all this chain of villages, here there's not much to change. It's pretty stable. Only problematic area could be when the Russians advance here. You see there's a lot of open fields. It gives them, like, some potential, but yeah, we're far away from that. Not much happening. Other part here is also really quiet. And so last area you can go to is Sumy, actually. Do you want to say something about that area?
Well, Sumy was their Russian main spring offensive. Initially caused some fear because the Ukrainians didn't necessarily react fast enough in the beginning. And there was a lot of concern that the Russians would manage to reach the forest, where it's easier to bite. It would be easier for them to bite themselves down into the terrain and create some sort of control that would have created an area where the Russians potentially could have set up artillery and hit Sumy a lot more easily than what they do now, where they have to use aerial bombs, drones, missiles, etc. So that was well executed counteroffensive by the Ukrainians in the spring, and since then, not much has happened, even though there's been a little bit of change.
Yeah. Also, it's not that dense in terms of unit concentration. Like both sides, I think the Russians were the first. First, the Russians rotated the naval brigades that they had deployed here in that area, rotated them out to like the south, to like the Donbass, and also the Ukrainians rotated some units out. So it's like the density of or the intensity of combat level has like decreased, I would say, to phrase it out correctly. And the Ukrainians have made some very minor liberations, but yeah, in overall, I would say this whole Sumy area is not that significant anymore. For both sides, the Ukrainians have reached their goal, as Erlend said, to deny the Russians to advance into this like forest area, and so the whole AO is not of like that significance anymore. It's like relatively stable, I would say, in a good sense. Yeah, and I think that was it with the frontline update, more or less. We have Ted Kino, but there's also not much happening there. Last related news we have, I consider as interesting, is not about the frontline, but I want to highlight it shortly. I think Emi wrote this as a rumor. I think it's confirmed now. The Russians have dismissed, have sacked the commander of the 51st Combined Arms Army. It's deployed in this Dobropilya area here. I can't see it that good with the maps to get rid of the geos. Yeah. So the units of the 51st Combined Arms Army were deployed here to push into the bunny ears. They had huge losses, like really massive losses in that area, but also approaching it in this wider area. And I'm not sure if it's connected. I mean, it's Russia. There are like dozen reasons to not, or to actually fire a commander or dismiss him. But in that case, it may be related that the losses were so horrible that this guy was dismissed. And it's also not really sure if the successor is better because he has the track. He was the commander of the 15th Motor Rifle Brigade, and yeah, Russia's deadliest brigade means they had the highest losses. They were pushing also around Pokrovsk for months, and I think this brigade has like had to be restaffed several times. So this is a new guy. Not sure if it's good or not, like bad news. We will see. It's kind of interesting. Like the Russians like seem not to be happy with the commanding in overall. Yeah, that's it for me for now. Are there any questions?
Oh, I think we can sum it up here, and then hope that you will be back again for a map update sometime soon.
Oh, sure, yeah. I would like to do that when there has been some time and some new developments. I think it's worth to do that. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jay, for doing the map update. This was a fairly comprehensive update. There's been some movement over the summer, and since you had the last update with Vincent, so this was definitely due. Thank you so much.
Yep. Can you end the screen sharing?
Yep,
Ah, okay,
I did.
perfect. Yep.
I did.
All right. We have Gesch here.
Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I have to say sorry in the beginning already because I sadly have to keep it short. I have to go to bed soon and also have a bit of a headache. So yeah, can't put too much time into this now. But I want to present a little bit about something that I have published on Tochnyi recently. Give me a second. Should be this screen. Yeah.
Ta-da! Wow. Congratulations, Gesch.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks to Chris for this great image at the top. I could never. So yeah, I finally decided to basically share some of the data that I and other people, I don't know if you know them, but I've been working with a team with War Unit Observer in the last months to bring some great sourced and hopefully accurate information about armed forces movement, etc. out there. And we don't only track the movement of units, but we also track the structure. And regarding that, we decided to publish some of the data about all the Russian units in the ground forces. I mean, it's a how should I say it? Could be prettier, but it was more of like a teaser because in the background we are also working on a website. I mean, so far it will be only available to a small number of people, but hopefully in the future we will also make it available for the public. I mean, the plan is to make it eventually available for the public, so they can also look into the structure, submit information, like get all the information about the different units, etc. We try to go as granular as possible. So whenever we get our hands on any information, even about the smallest drone teams, we try to document it. We try to put sources behind it. We try to put it into our database, and to in the end have as good of an overview as possible over the Russian and also the Ukrainian military structure. Yep, I mean, this year is only now the Russian ground forces. We also plan hopefully in the near future. Always depends when I or the others find the time for it to also release similar graphics for the Russian VDV, for the Russian fleet commands and the naval infantry, for the Russian BKS, etc. I'm working together with some great people who have a lot of knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to compiling the information and getting the best information out there possible. Yep, this is the short overview. If anyone here wants to take a look at the article, you can always go to tochnyi.info and take a look. And all feedback is also appreciated. What of battle is a very fluid topic. You have to say, stuff constantly changes. You get stuff wrong. I also have certainly some information wrong, sadly, and I'm also always happy to hear corrections or input or feedback or anything or additional information. Yeah, there's no reason to be too stubborn about your information when someone presents something better, but this is the case for for most stuff out there. Sorry, my brain is a bit mush today, so I don't really know what else to talk about now. But maybe, Erlend, you have some points that I could dive into.
Well, first of all, thank you. I know that there's a lot of work behind this, and you've been eager to show more of your data and the graphics work that you have already done to display this. I think that it's going to be really exciting to see what you come up with next. But I also hope that you get an update about the naval forces and the VDV soon in a similar fashion I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of nerds craving about this. That's my first
and
first
sitting
thought.
there in the holes and saying, "Oh, you subordinated this wrong." I'm also looking forward to that, to be honest.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you so much, and please go and check it out and send feedback to the @WarUnitObserver on Twitter or on Blue Sky, right?
Yeah, we are mostly, to be honest, on Twitter these days, because not all of our members always were so happy with just mirroring the content. I don't know why, so we kind of gave up on it. Sometimes I still do it, but yeah, like all of our content is certainly on Twitter, and some also gets mirrored to Blue Sky. But yeah, yeah, sorry that I had to make it this short today. Yeah. If there's still any questions or anything, can still answer them. But yeah,
I haven't seen any questions in chat, but I want to invite you back and talk about Sleepy Russians that you find another time soon, as it's been quite some time since
yeah,
we've done that.
you're right. I have to. I also want to be back soon. I think there's a lot to talk about.
Yep.
Especially
a lot of changes also in the in Orbit.
Yeah. You know, when most topics when it comes to changes in orbit these days, it's mostly drones, but not only. Also assault units. There's some interesting stuff going on. But yeah, I think more on that when I'm back on the stream, hopefully in the not too many weeks in the future.
I'm gonna kidnap you soon.
Oh.
Okay. Well, really looking forward to see what more is in the works, and I hope that it's going to be smoother to publish something next time, since you already have a methodology now. And
we totally will change our methodology. We now have our own. Previously, we operated out of Google Sheets. Google Sheets is not a database for anyone wondering out there. That's why after some time it gets horrible to work with. But now with our own program, we hope to be able to produce those graphics way easier, way up to date. I mean, we had to create those graphics a few weeks back because we had to discontinue the sheets, and now even some data on this graphics is already outdated and missing. Like there's the 270th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 42nd Motorized Rifle Division, which is missing because we only discovered it in the meantime. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to also working with our new tools and giving even more up-to-date and prettier information. Yep.
absolutely looking forward to it. So yeah, you can go to sleep now, Gesch.
Thanks a lot.
I'm gonna turn it back to you, Joseph.
Okay, well, thanks, Erlend. Did you see any questions in chat we wanted to get to?
I'm looking for. I saw there was a question directed to Colby. I'm going to find it now.
Yeah, I can read it. So
There.
it is in 2023, there was an announcement that Ukraine would get the AI AMD SOS system from Northrop Grumman. Did that happen? And if yes, does it work?
Ukraine received an IBCS Engagement Operations Center a long time ago from the United States. Ukraine has not been provided with access to Link 16, but they don't need Link 16 to use that EOC. They've figured out, I mean, it's compatible with the Patriot assets that Ukraine has from the United States and other donor countries like Germany. And they've implemented a lot of sort of improvised solutions to try and better network all of these assets without having the benefit of having access to the Link 16 network and all of the other hardware pieces that would help with that. But yes, they do have that particular asset and potentially some others, but we do know for a fact that they do have at least one engagement operations center as part of the IBCS system.
Okay, thank you, Colby. Next question I see is for Jay. It says, have you noticed Ukraine building fallback lines or areas west of Pokrovsk?
I think Jay went for a beer.
Oh, okay.
But I just want to mention that this whole area is a highly risky sector for Ukraine to reveal this kind of works. There's certainly been efforts to defend or build defensive positions around the whole operational zone of Pokrovsk. But I haven't seen any reliable maps of the area of Pokrovsk from before the Russian offensive in 2025 towards Pokrovsk. The people that were tracking those things, in my opinion, did not manage to track it as well as they've done in the past, possibly because Ukraine has been a lot more careful about releasing images, and also it may have something to do with the agencies that provide satellite imagery have done some stuff to cover up the areas, because things were not reported as they were, it seems. A lot of people said that there were no real defensive positions south of Pokrovsk, but there were. So I don't think we have reliable information from open sources about it.
Okay, I think the next question is also for you, Erlend. What do you think of the idea that it's now easier to hold fields than urban areas, which would be the reverse of the past?
So I'm not certain. Well, the thing is, of urban areas, it is possible to move without being spotted by a drone, right? So dronization has been a thing in the Ukraine and the war in Ukraine since 2023, and it's kind of reached, I wouldn't say maximal potential, but it's reached to a level where almost every inch of the front line is covered by drone surveillance. Especially the high intensity areas, there will always be drones watching over those areas, and that the consequence has become that it's easier for infantry to move in an urban area than it is in the terrain. That's a change from other conflicts, but not necessarily a big unexpected change.
Okay, and then I think the last question I see this week is Ukraine did attack or derail some trains in occupied South Ukraine over the past months. Did they successfully blockade Russian rail logistics, or are they able to clean them up or bypass them?
Okay, yeah, I want to answer that question. The short answer is yes, but I will explain it shortly. I guess it's referring to these strikes on a train. I forgot the town, but yeah, around Tochnyi in August. It was in the summer, and the train had fuel cars and was burning. And if that's the reference, yes, it's the first time it was pretty successful blockade of Russian railway logistics, because you could track that with satellite images. And before, in the past, these train strikes were cleared pretty fast by the Russian railway troops, which are good at what they're doing. But this time it resulted actually it was 6 weeks, if I remember it correctly, that this whole railway, it was like it has only one track. It's not double track. So yeah, perfect. Yeah, there we have it. Did not look good for the Russians. Yeah, it lasted. The whole track was blocked for like 6 weeks, because you could see the train there. And in early October, I think the cars were derailed. Some people took a bit like more high res, not super high res, but pretty decent images from Planet, I think. And there you could see that it was in the second week in October that the tracks were basically unblocked. So yeah, 6 weeks or almost 7 weeks it was blockaded. Pretty good, I would say. Maybe addendum, it should not be expected. This will always be the case. This was really severe to clear for the Russians. I don't know if there were some chemicals or whatever where they struggled with. But yeah, if you blockade like a railway for more than like for a month and a half, I would say it's pretty successful. Yeah. And on the range, more than 30 kilometers away from the front line. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think it was a good answer. Definitely better than what I was going to say. So, yeah. That's, I think, all the questions we had in chat this week. Thank you, chat, for all your great questions, for all your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate you guys tuning live. Thanks, of course, to our illustrious panel this week. Thanks to Colby. Thanks to Jay. Thanks to Mr. German Aid to Ukraine. Thanks to Stanimir. I can't believe it. He made it just in time. Now I have to thank myself because Gau's here. Thanks to Erlend, of course, for running the whole thing. We appreciate it. And yeah, thanks to everyone watching the broadcast after the fact. We know not everyone can make it live, so thanks. If you guys do want more Tochnyi, you can always check us out. Please do like the stream. You can subscribe to the channel. We post some other stuff, some shorts and things like that. And then also you can check us out on Twitter and Blue Sky. And then as Gesch was saying before, thanks to Gesch, of course. I should make sure I thank everyone. Gesch was mentioning that, his new article and his new project is, or I shouldn't say new project, but his project is published on the website Tochnyi.info. So if you want more detail about what Gesch was talking about, that would be the place to see it, Tochnyi.info. Thanks everyone for tuning in this week. We'll see everyone next week at 2100 Kyiv time. I think everyone's now resynchronized on daylight savings time. So we'll see everyone at 2100 Kyiv time next Sunday. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава.
On behalf of the brave.